Thank you very much. Through you, Chair. In terms of the assessment of the effectiveness of internal financial controls, what I wanted to find out, Chair, is how does this assessment compare to prior periods? And maybe I might recommend that when Brian does a chart, to actually put the years, and that shows the comparison. And then the second part of the question is how, based on the current risk assessment that he's walked us through, are there any areas at a high level that management should focus on to ensure continued effective internal controls? Thank you, Chair.
Any further questions? You covered. Brian?
Thank you, Chair. Just on the assessment, how it compares to the prior periods, say we upped our game this year. As you can see, we're giving positive assurance. So we did we did benchmark the process, and we went and designed our procedures to include all emerging improvements that we've seen in the internal audit industry, and we have done our assessment based on best practice and the latest trends around COSO. Just around the current risk assessment, the point is taken. We will adjust our reporting in the next round. And just focusing, the question you raised around the focus to ensure, the question you raised around what management should focus on around internal controls. Chair, as I highlighted, we need to put more effort in how we align our risk management process and policy with our strategy and also our control framework. I think this is something that needs to be facilitated by the Chief Risk Officer. And right now, we're not getting that input from the Chief Risk Officer. So I'm raising that as a concern for management. I hope when we meet next time, I'll have a better feedback to give around that issue. The other issue that I think we probably need to put more emphasis on is around change control procedures. That issue has been partially addressed by management, but I think with the IT involvement from external auditors, they have set up meetings where they are going to try and improve that process around change management procedures and just get them up to date with the latest benchmarks that they've seen in the industry.
Thank you, Brian. On the next document, the internal audit dashboard, any questions? Members, thank you, Brian. I have one question related to the next document that talks about your assessment of the effectiveness of internal financial controls. It sort of relates to the dashboard. On AC 14, there were 10 audit areas in your plan. However, we're only reporting on 4 areas. Can you just clarify the difference of 6? Why are we not reporting on the other 6?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, my report only focuses on high-risk areas. So what I'm reporting here is just the high-risk areas. So we did do a review of 10 areas, but we didn't get any high-risk findings in the other 6 areas. So that's why you only find 4 areas being reported on.
Thank you, Brian. To the committee, the 3-year rolling plan. Are there any questions for Brian? Brian, you have presented this. No, you're going to present this now. The 3-year rolling plan. Okay, Brian's going to present the 3-year rolling plan.
Thank you, Chair. As I indicated, Chair, the 3-year rolling plan, there's not been any significant changes. We have done our initial year, and everything has been covered except for a few areas at the request of management that have been rolled over into the next year. The areas that we're going to cover risk management, where we're going to be looking at credit risk, fair value risk. We're also going to look at the impact of foreign exchange risk. We're also going to look at governance and management. I think this is an area where our governance structures need to be revisited, and we see how the impact of our risk management framework has been impacted on with the current risk structures that we have. Board committees, this is just a review of the policies So this is scheduled for the next cycle, and we'll do it again in the 2015 and 2016 cycles. This is an annual thing. Commercial activities, I think just given the fact that there's a lot of change in the business that the business faces, we're going to look at that just to make sure that the controls or management is actually implementing their strategy around commercial activities. And Chair, I think the other issues are just regular areas that we as internal audit look at. We're going to look at human resources, regulatory compliance, and information technology. I'll take any questions on this document from audit committee members.
Thank you, Brian. Members, any questions? Just a question from my side. I'd like to know, were there any engagements with external auditors in preparing this plan?
Thank you, Chair. We do engage with external audit. As you know, Chair, we as internal audit do drive the combined assurance forum. We engage with external audit on a monthly basis, and we ensure that they give us input in driving our plan, and we try and reduce savings on the area that they can place reliance on us. It's just unfortunate at the moment that the Chief Risk Officer is not playing his part in this combined assurance forum. I think if we did have his input, Chair, external auditors would have relied on the controls. As you can see, currently they are following a fully substantive approach, and I think we can save quite a lot of audit fees if the Chief Risk Officer did align all these risks and controls and ensure that the environment is conducive for external audit to rely on controls.
Thank you, Brian. Member?
Through you, Chair, thank you. The amount of time that a high-performing executive has to address about the Chief Risk Officer, could we get a report about what we're doing to deal with non-performing executives?
Thank you, Member. That's noted. Any other questions? I think to the Company Secretary, we need to note that point. What is the process for dealing with non-performance of executives? And how do we take that back? I will raise that, like I said, with the Chief Risk Officer and potentially with the CEO. It's a bit difficult that the CEO has also not attended this meeting to hear our concerns. And I think we, in terms of our charter, need to drive that mandate forward, that the risks are properly managed and are taken forward, and non-performing executives are dealt with appropriately in terms of the performance contract and the report back. Otherwise, the institution might fail in some serious way. In terms of the plan, I do note that it is based on the risks of the institution. However, I do have some discomfort approving it without the Chief Risk Officer being here, and also our concern related to lack of performance. I think perhaps if we could maybe have a special meeting in a month after we get feedback, after we get a full view of the risk management framework, we can then take this plan and approve it in a month's time, so that we get that comfort that all the risks are being mitigated. Company Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wish not to comment with regards to the performance management of the executives. However, I need to note that the Nominations Committee is responsible for the performance of the executive directors and the CEO. And tomorrow is a board meeting, and I think a number of issues that we've raised with regards to non-performance and non-attendance of the CEO and the CRO of this meeting needs to be brought into the attention of the board, because in terms of King 3, the board has got ultimate responsibility of risk management within the organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Comment from the member?
Chair, when the CAE submits resubmits his 3-year rolling plan, if you could submit the 1-year rolling plan, 1-year plan, please, together with the budget in the budgeted hours. Thanks.
Brian?
Thank you, Chair. Noted. I will submit and I will attend that meeting as well.
Through you, Chair, can I then suggest that we do the 1-year plan through Ron Robin, so that we enable our internal auditors to proceed with the work that needs to be done. So by next week, we will be sending out an email and a memo to all the audit committee members to approve the plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Company Secretary. I think we should follow that approach on the round robin approval. Members, next item on the agenda is evaluation of the budget and the internal audit resources. Brian, could you take us through this, and then we'll take questions thereafter.
As indicated, Chair, I think on the budget we did have some areas where we have some savings, and we also have some areas where we had some overruns. But from an overall perspective, as you can see, Chair, we're still within budget, and I think there's been some savings for the entity as well. We did cover all our risk areas, and I think in terms of where we are with the fees, we're not going to ask for any additional budget. We think we'll work within the budget that was approved. Thank you, Chair. I'll take any questions on any specific overruns or any specific variance within my budget.
Thank you, Brian. Members, any questions?
Chair, my first question to the CAE is why were the follow-up reviews not done? That's just standard. I don't understand why those were not done. Secondly, also you didn't perform any IT audit reviews. No IT audit follow-up. We didn't. In fact, none of the IT audit reviews were done. Because we cannot rely on what the external auditors are doing. They do the ITGC and application controls review, and that's different to what the internal auditors or IT auditors are supposed to be giving us assurance on. And lastly, Chairman, on this recon on actual costs against the budget, also one review was not performed, the quarterly performance information review. It was not done. Thank you. Continue.
Brian?
Thank you, Chair. Just around the quarterly information review, that work was postponed. There is a report on 3 quarters, so we just left with 1 quarter, which we'll be engaging on in the next week. So that report is delayed, and it will be done before the next meeting. Around the IT follow-ups and just the follow-up reviews, as you can see, the most time was allocated to the review of the finding that we had with the CRO. And as I indicated earlier, he's been giving me a tough time. I haven't been able to engage with them, so that review has not been done. Hence, there's no actual costs put against that. With IT, the IT division was also waiting for the CRO just to align risks, and I think that area also has also been postponed to the next year's Chair.
Thank you, Brian. Follow-up questions?
Just to acknowledge, I really think that as a committee we do, through you, Chair, need to acknowledge that Brian's report not being signed off and approved does not in any way communicate that you have not done your part of the role. And I commend you, the fact that you are bold enough to state the presenting issue. Be assured that once we get the report, we will ensure that the CEO addresses the CRO. Hopefully the name doesn't have to come up again.
Thank you, Member. Members, are we happy with this evaluation for the past year? Thank you. The next item on the agenda was the IT governance report, which was due to be presented by the CEO. And why it would have been presented by the CEO is because IT has become a critical factor in this business. It's supposed to be assisting with managing our risks, but also mapping our strategy, looking at our production lines, and also ultimately assisting us with our financial reporting and managing against our KPIs. The CEO is not here. I do recommend that this be taken at the next meeting because I'm sure we all have questions around this report and how it's contributing to the overall strategy and governance framework. Is the committee happy with that suggestion? Thank you, members. Company Secretary?
I would like also to suggest to you, Mr. Chair, that at the board meeting, the CEO also gives a report around the risk profile of the organization. Perhaps it might be an opportunity for the members to request the CEO to touch on high-level risk points in terms of the governance, in terms of IT.
Thank you, that's noted. Please put that on the agenda for tomorrow. Item 13, we have our annual audit committee report, which was circulated. As everyone read this report, are we happy to approve this report for inclusion in the annual report? Members, happy? Thank you. The next item is the evaluation of the CFO and company secretary. You will note we decided that we should perform an evaluation, an independent evaluation of the CFO and company secretary. All members, I'm going to take the evaluations as read. You all have submitted your own evaluations. Are there any questions or concerns that you would like to raise with the company secretary or CFO regarding their performance or their duties? Members? Thank you. Well done, company secretary and CFO. No concerns noted from our side. I think we have various concerns with the CRO. We should start evaluating the CRO as well. Regarding our audit committee charter, it's here for recommendation. I'm going to take the document as read. There aren't many significant changes. Is everybody happy to recommend this through to the board? Members? Member?
Yeah, I just thought of something, Chair, about our skills base with regards to IT governance. If we can just make sure that when we talk, just to amend our charter to include that, just make sure that we're properly skilled as well.
Thanks. I think that is important, considering IT has come to the fore, so we can include it in our charter. Company secretary, can we work on that to include it in our charter before we send it through to the board in the coming month? Thank you. We are now on item 16, related to the whistleblowing policy, which a company secretary will take us through.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and the members. I'd like to take the document as being read. The intention of the document, which is following in terms of the Protected Disclosure Act, it requires a company to formulate a policy in terms of protecting its employees. More than above that, it also talks about protecting its customers or any person who might come forward and make a complaint against the company in terms of its internal controls, against its regulatory breaches. So we've put together a whistleblowing policy to react to that legal requirement. Also, I need to note for you members that the Companies Act, in terms of Section 159, it requires a company to have a whistleblowing protection measures, and this is to respond to those two requirements in terms of our legal requirements in South Africa. I would like also to note that the whistleblowing policy has got remedies in the case of an employee being victimized. If an employee would come forward and lay a charge or a breach of any issue that the employee might have. So there are quite a few remedies. We also have a whistleblowing hotline that I'm pleased to note that it's managed independently by our external auditors. So all the issues that are being raised, or all the complaints that are being raised in relation to the whistleblowing are being handled through an independent provider, and those are discussed with the audit committee, and any issue that needs to be resolved are resolved by the external party and the audit committee. I'd like to propose that the policy is recommended to the board for approval.
Thank you, Company Secretary. Members, any questions, feedback or comments? I've read it. I think it's got a good policy and it's helping us to comply with the Companies Act as well. So I think as a committee we're happy to recommend that the board approves this policy. Next item on the agenda, item 17. There's a policy for the approval of non-assurance services provided by the external auditor. I think we've all noted some concerns where external audit firms do other work for clients. And I think it's a good practice to have a policy that relates to what can be approved and what cannot be approved. The company secretary will take us briefly through this document as well.
would like also to check this policy being read by the members. The two matters that I'd like to highlight is the fact that in terms of the Companies Act, this committee is responsible to determine the nature and the extent of any non-audit services that might be provided by our external auditors. In this case would be Nkonki. And the Act requires that these services must be approved and signed off by either the chairman of the committee or any member of the committee that is appointed to do the pre-approvals. The document does talk about the fee levels that the committee has to approve. Last year we set the fee to be 10% of the total fees that we paid over to the external auditors. The members would like to talk through that to recommend whether they agree that the 10% that we've agreed last year is maintained. And then also that the delegation of authority be given to the chairman for any pre-approval of the services to be approved by the chairman. Thank you.
Members, question or comments on the policy?
I'm happy with the recommendation and the policy. However, Chairman, I would just like to say with any NAF, if you could still do what you were doing around Robin for us to have a view of what's coming through, because a pair of few eyes are better than just one before you do the approval.
Thank you, that's noted, and going forward I'll make sure before any policy comes through, it's sent through for independent, fresh eyes to cast their mind across those policies. Thank you. So we're happy to recommend this through to the board for approval. Thank you, members. We're now on item 18. It's an evaluation of our effectiveness by the board. As you will recall, we had 15 areas of responsibility as delegated to in our board charter, in our AC charter by the board. And if you look at the overall conclusion, we achieved all of those 15 areas, and the board was satisfied that we had discharged our duties and we were an effective audit committee. So this is quite a good pat on the back of us. I think we need to keep it up as a committee, continue our engagements, keep questioning management, asking those difficult questions, and even try to rein in the Chief Risk Officer to improve our effectiveness. Any questions or comments? Any areas of concern? Improvement areas, members?
Just commend you for your leadership.
Thank you.
I just also want to add, Mr. Chair, through the annual board evaluation that even there at the nominations committee, the members were discussing the resounding results of the performance of the audit committee in terms of its effectiveness. And I think the group has got 76% in total in terms of the independent evaluation, and the committee and the audit committee has come out very well. It's sitting at 86%. So I think that's congratulations and well done to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Company Secretary. Hope I'll get an extra lunch out of this. We're on item 19. It's progress against our annual audit committee plan. It's for noting. You'll note this comes from our AC charter, and our agendas are set up based on this. Looking at this meeting, I think we have included all items. Company Secretary, any concerns from your side?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any concerns. I'm quite comfortable with what I see. And I think I'm quite comfortable to say that after this meeting, when I sign the Section 88 requirements in terms of the Companies Act, I'll be a very happy company secretary, and thank you to the members for your support.
Thank you, Company Secretary. We're now on point 20.1, which relates to the structure of the compliance division. It's here for discussion. The compliance officer, Serena, will present this for our consideration and discussion. Thank you, Serena.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the committee as well. In terms of the report, this is the first report that the compliance function, from the compliance function, and I think the main purpose of this is just to provide oversight to this committee in terms of the structure and the approach that we propose, in terms of the establishment and development of the compliance methodology within the organization. So if we move on to page 2, we've provided a brief overview in terms of the structure. So the Chief Compliance Officer or the Head of Compliance will report directly to an Executive Director and will have direct access to this committee as well as to the Chairman of the committee for any issues or concerns that we may have. And then obviously the appointment of a team of qualified and experienced compliance officers to assist. Then moving on, we've also provided an overview in terms of the compliance framework and approach that we plan to follow. We'd like to highlight that in essence there's 4 pillars that the compliance methodology will focus on. Firstly being the management of regulatory change, then the advisory and guidance services that we will provide to the business to ensure that the business is aware of and has appropriate and sufficient controls in place. And then the monitoring work that we will do, correlating with internal audit to make sure that there's no duplication, but making sure that there's overall efficiency in terms of the assessment of any of the controls and processes within the business to make sure we meet our compliance obligations. And lastly is a program of regulatory training and awareness to make sure that the staff within the organization is well aware of what their regulatory obligations and responsibilities are. We believe that this methodology and approach will be sufficient to assist the board of directors in understanding and ensuring that the business is adhering to regulatory requirements, best practice and industry codes. Then for information for this committee, lastly we've provided you with an overview of the escalations framework and how we see the various severities in terms of issues that we identify, how we will handle each of those issues, and what this committee can expect to see from here on forward. Okay, so I'll take this as read and I'll take questions if there's any.
Members, do we have any questions? Okay, I do note a concern from the member. She says she's only just received the document. So in the future, I know you're understaffed at the moment, you're fairly new, but if you could please try to capacitate your department so not only will we get our documents in time, but so you can deliver on this great plan that you've actually presented.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Noted.
Just through you, I really believe that risk management is quite critical to us. So may I propose that we discuss this in the next meeting after we have applied our mind, because it's critical to our fiduciary duty.
Quite happy with that. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, members. We now come to item 20.2, which is about a book I recently read. It's written by a thought leader in the space of audit committee members or audit committees itself and how to be a more effective audit committee. I think it's quite a genius niche book that's come out. I urge you all to please get a copy and read it. It'll help improve our performance as an audit committee, and it also adds valuable insights on what we can do going forward better and how to improve our leadership and oversight functions in terms of accountability, transparency, governance, and compliance. The book is written by Cindy Zilwa. It's called The ACE Model, Winning Formula for Audit Committees. Please get yourselves a copy, and it's a great read. I do know Cindy quite well, so I'll see if I can arrange perhaps a discount for this, and I'll give you feedback through that. Just quickly, we've got our in-committee meetings. Members, are we happy, or would we like to have in-committees with the external auditors? Okay, so we will not be having an in-committee meeting with external audit. There were the external audit assessments sent out. I've noted you all have complete that. Company Secretary, were they all signed and submitted back to you?
Yes, Mr. Chair, they were all signed and submitted.
Thank you for that, members. Internal audit, would you like to have an in-committee with the members?
Chair, I think at this stage, I would pass on the internal meeting in committee.
Thank you. To senior management, CFO, compliance officer, company secretary present, would you guys also like an in-committee, or are you guys fine for now? Not required. Thank you. Just quickly, before we close the meeting, I think it's important to note the conflict of interest for these meetings. I think not all of them have been received back. I don't think there are any conflicts of interest. Usually they've been noted these meetings, but please, for compliance and for assurance, can you please sign those and send it back through to the company secretary by close of business today. Members, date of the next meeting will be on the 31st of December, 2013. We're hosting the meeting at the waterfront in Chicago, so please avail yourselves. And it will be all expenses paid, so you might have to declare that somewhere else. But thank you, and I call this meeting to closure.
All right. Are there questions? All right, there's a couple.